Hello, and welcome to the Leadership Summit here at Western Illinois University. I am your host, Quentin Parker, and I am excited to have as my guest today, Mr. Byron Oden Shabazz. Mr. Oden Shabazz is a community leader, co-president of the WIU Black Caucus, mentorship director of the Center for Studies of the Masculinities and Men's Development, founder and director of the Sacred Circle Mentorship Organization. His newest community project is titled The Professor, the Preacher, and the Mentor. Welcome, Byron, and thank you for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
Our leadership conversation today will be about the black male's role in mentorship, and not only in higher education, but in all levels of education, and what that means to our community. So my first question to you, Byron, is what is the black male's role in education and leadership, and why is that important to us?
Well, it's important because currently we have a situation where almost 64 to 70% of households in the black community are headed by black females. And like any society, when you remove the male, you tend to have a bit of chaos. And that's purely because, as it relates to mentorship, there's something to follow, something to pattern yourself after. So as we see often, we see these outside images and forces, and this is what these young men start to model. Or mimic, I should say. And what mentorship does is it steps in the way and introduces, say, a healthy model to follow. And it also helps guide along the way, step by step, how you get from one space to the next space in a healthy manner, though.
So what kind of things and visuals, or just things in general, that are you speaking of that you have to replace your mentorship with?
We take a look at say modern hip-hop. Hip-hop in the 80s was all about, you know, what I am. You see what I mean? It's about I am a black man, I am an African, I am a descendant of kings and queens. I am, you know, in the 80s you had a lot of hip-hop artists. They were basically college students, and many of them they belonged to black social organizations that empowerment was the key, kind of splinters of the Black Power movement. And so what it was about was protecting the community, becoming this person and saying I am in a positive, affirmative way. If we look at modern hip hop, it is more about materialism, abuse of women, in my opinion, more the materialism. Yes, the issue about the way these men are performing masculinity, but what's worse is we live in a society where these guys are being rewarded. You see what I mean? So they tell the story of I was a drug dealer and I was destructing this and I abused this woman, but I made all the money. And so now I'm put in a class with the people with the money, with the power source. And so that's how they're looked at. And so if you're in an environment where there's not a lot of resources, and then some guy's driving around that neighborhood in a Mercedes and a pocket full of money and he's got the girls, well, it's kind of hard to take your eye off him because he makes himself known. You see, the problem, I guess, as it relates to mentorship and gangs, and the way that I try to explain it to institutions where I speak or talk to someone, to see the street has always been consistent. Gangs, consistent. Why would someone enter into an organization that they know this is about risk, this is about crime, this is about all these things, which is removed from what they originally started for, because originally it was about protection.
Right.
And bullying, but now you take on a group where you know ultimately you can die being a part of this. But see, the message is very clear. You enter into the gang, you know the codes, you know what it takes to move up that ladder and that structure, and you do all of those things to do that. But see, they see that end result, and that end result may just be they get X amount of dollars and they get this power. Well, society, the school systems, and the systems are not consistent that way.
Right.
And so as it relates to these black males and images, the prevailing image we see, particularly of black men, are entertainers, athletes, preachers, you know, and there's nothing wrong with the preacher, so to speak, but they've got to come from behind the pulpit and reach those boys in the street. You see, when you start talking about the people that they see, you know, in society, you know, if you don't carry a ball, you're really not that important. See, we can name off the star at Macomb High School that's a black boy, okay? But name me the black boys locally that are on the honor roll. Can't name them because we don't treat them with any level of importance. But if he's an all-state football player, oh, we know his name.
It's a different story. Yeah.
Yes.
So that has to be difficult, because I heard somebody talking about how the lyrics that's, let's say, Lil Wayne, you talked about modern hip hop and other music. They said Lil Wayne had a degree from a highly well-known college. I think it was Harvard or Stanford or something like that. And his lyrics do not reflect any of what he's saying for the most part.
That's really politics.
Right.
You understand? In the street, you know, he gained all this credibility from having been shot when he was young. But see, his degree is not going to weigh nearly what his hip hop lyrics weigh.
Right.
You see me? Which is when you look at a Tupac, when he's saying, you know, the things that he's saying, we have to come together, we have to do this, and he explains the story of the young black mother.
Right.
When you're talking about a Public Enemy, who's not a #1 song on the radio, is Fight the Power. When the political structure again started coming onto the black community, they went to those young minds again and said, fight the power. So now there's a theme and an anthem in the minds of young black people, poor, educated, middle class. You see what I mean? They have a theme. So now today, you take an educated young black man like Wayne. Okay, we know how society's set up. We know what the employment structure's like. We know we really can't talk about it without mentioning white privilege, without talking about a system of white supremacy. And when I say that, let me backtrack. When I say white supremacy, I don't mean like there's a bunch of white people chasing black people. No. I simply mean that there are systems in place that open doors more comfortably and easily for white males. Okay, I have a degree, working on a second one. Within my household, when I'm done next May, there'll be 6 degrees in my house. And yet, you know how often I'm followed? You know how many times I've been in Walmart and looked back? You see what I mean? So Lil Wayne clearly looked and said, there's more money in me performing this degrading form of masculinity or manhood than it is if I took my degree and took a job. What can I do for these people? You see what I mean? But he can do a whole lot for him, and he's gone along with performing this act that is constantly rewarding him. So back to the first question. When you see people perform a certain way and it's being validated and you being paid for it, even though it's degrading, you see, because there's enough black, and the reason I don't buy when people make excuses and say it's just business. Well, you know, too many of us came out of single family households to know the struggle of single black mothers to say, well, now I'm just going to abuse women.
Yeah.
No, it's not something foreign. It's something that you know. So you consciously chose, I'll choose the money and really create really the demise of my own community following my music, because I have the money, because I get to be at the party where the whites with the power are, even though I might be outside of that, but I'm way ahead of most people. So I'll trade that.
How do you organize this message for young males and females in mentoring so that they can understand what they're facing when they listen to music or watch television, as far as being the leaders that they can be?
For me, it's a lot of up close and personal. When you were young, you knew me. Hey, Quentin, how's it going? When you going back to school, man?
Yeah.
When you going to graduate? You understand? And so for me, it's that remove all of this pretension, I don't, for lack of a better word. For me, it is, when I started building this program, I went one by one. And I got there's not one person in that mentorship group that you can't say, what's their name, and I can tell you their situation. This person is a fairly good student. They come from these circumstances, so I've tried to help them get these. And this is where Dr. Ron Williams and Dr. Tracy Davis, have come to. I created a structure so when the students come to me and I start to understand their story, I have resources that I go to. But as relates to the initial question is, I built it one by one to have those personal conversations to make them know, no, I'm concerned about you as an individual. Now, we are a group, and that's what the circle does. I don't sit and have them sit military style in rows. Right. We sit in a circle, because though I might lead the circle or bring the topic up, every single person in here is equal. We are all the same.
Now, a lot of the classes that I had, the sport ethics class and the sport management program, which you just entered, this semester here, and that was the one class that really made us feel like we had a part and a say in what was going on. We sat in a circle and we talked about the ethics, and it came down a lot to, about race and leadership and how to be a better understander of what the NCAA and the IHSA and the different high school associations are putting these kids through, and the way they're quote unquote using them to get ahead financially. So I guess my next question would be, when did you realize what your role was going to be in leadership and mentorship?
You know, I have a, I was that story. You know, I was the high school kid that went from 10th grade to being everything by the time I was a senior, recruited by schools all over the country. You know, I'm living in a housing project, but I'm traveling, going all over the country competing, and I'm coming home to a housing project. And so all of a sudden, you know, I realized, you know, I can go to Michigan, I can go to Stanford, you know, I can go to Georgetown. I mean, these people are calling my house. They are sending me letters. They are, you know, trying to recruit me. And so when I actually got out and I started to see what was happening, well, I was the story of the kid that made it to the big time and got hurt my freshman year. And I started to see the way things started to change. You know, you come in, you know, I kept the letter. When I signed with Michigan State, you know, the coaches wrote me a letter and it's saying, you know, as a freshman, we believe you can come in, we believe you probably make all Big Ten, you can do this, and you have the potential, you know, you have the time and the talent, blah, blah, blah. Well, I got hurt, and I started to notice the difference in the way I was being handled.
Yeah.
You know, I was still on scholarship and everything was good, but it allowed me to see exactly how this thing works now. Because remember, I was the privileged kid, you know what I mean? My roommate the summer prior was, when I say literally, the world's best. His name was Earl Jones, and he bronzed in the Olympics that next spring. So I'm with somebody that I'm basically chasing, building a career because I'm taking second to him, but I'm watching his life change, and he was poorer than I. So when my undergrad was basically in African American studies, so I'm a serious historian, particularly of our story. So when I came to sport management, I knew already my responsibility as a black man and what I needed to be able to bring to the sport. Because as we see, we talk about 70% of the NFL, the NBA, and a vast majority of your major Division I institutions, you know, these are black males. But as a voice, as someone to be in the middle of that and start to articulate some of what's happening, because here's the fast answer to that. Have you ever heard of a broke agent?
No.
No,
they
but how many
money.
Broke athletes, black athletes,
Plenty.
do you know? You see what I mean? So it's back to being almost a commodity.
Right.
And I want to build an academy and an institution that really gets in, I don't want to say get in the way of that, to really start to educate them, educate these high school athletes going into college and the ones that are potentially going to the NFL, to have that conversation. Because in the middle level, at the college level, for me, leadership is about, there needs to be more serious discussion about, you can't play and just go to class to be eligible.
Right.
Because a vast majority of you will never see the NFL, the NBA, or anything of that magnitude. So when you're in the classroom, you need to master whatever it is you're majoring in. So the football don't work out, you're not stressed out. You're thinking, hey, I made the best of what I have, and now it's time to get a post-secondary degree.
You know, I think that that situation right there is the most important when it comes to an athlete, at least. Because like you said, when you get hurt, like I did and you did, at that point in your career when you're transitioning, it can be very difficult. And if you don't handle it well, things can go completely the other direction, just like that. And the void you're talking about between the way they groom college players, the NFL does an okay job now. When you get there, the NBA, they teach you how to spend your money. They teach you how to stay away from the clubs and whatnot, somewhat. But in college, it's like you said, there is no real voice for those people. And I think if you get this leadership program off the ground, as far as the college athletes, you can be somebody who can make a difference across the world. Because like you said, they come home and they go right back to the block, serving the block. They don't know nothing else because they left that. That's what they left. They went to college and went to class, and for what? to be eligible.
And to take it a step further, looking at the research and looking at, people that I've known in college, I have friends who have 2 bowl rings from Michigan, or, they went to some school and got a bowl ring, and something happened their junior year and they get hurt, and now all of a sudden, instead of universities actually saying, you got hurt doing something for us that could affect the rest of your life, so we need to pay for the next years of school to see that you graduate. But now we have this yearly signing of scholarships, so you bring this elite athlete in, he comes, and just by freak of nature during the game he gets hurt, you owe him something. Yeah. You owe him, because the amount of money these institutions are making in bowl games, millions. You're talking about, you're an inner city kid playing college football, okay? Maybe you came from poverty, but now you're playing at a major institution, right? You go to a bowl game. You take that and calculate what these guys come from and what they're making these institutions. You almost can't do it. I mean, it is the figure. I mean, we have some general figures out there, but I think all of that has to be discussed as it relates to helping these guys when the football doesn't work out, when the sport, doesn't work out.
In general, yeah.
Right.
Tell me a little bit about your new project, The Professor, the Preacher, and the Mentor.
That was important, and I've been working with Dr. Barry McCrary and Raleigh Mitchell, who's a local pastor. We all do work in the prisons, and one of the things we clearly agreed upon is to have a professor, a preacher, and a mentor. With that formula, we think we can reach even more people, because as we've gone in, and Pastor Mitchell, he goes in and he talks about God's graces and how you can save yourself. Dr. McCrary is going to come in with a little more theoretical approach, being a professor. I, as a mentor, I started talking about the structures of what they need to find and attach themselves to try to move or transition themselves. So you put that together as a formula, it works pretty well. But we're not only doing that, we also are going to take that all the way down to little boys in the community. Because again, as we said before, that 64 to 70% of these households are being ran by black females. And I think it's, as I heard before, it's not that these women can't raise their sons, but they shouldn't have to.
They shouldn't, no. I mean, I grew up in a single family home, and I know what it's like, but you grow up fast.
Right.
And that's like the only advantage.
Right.
You get to experience the world in such a way that when you do get to those transition points, you're more mature and you can make better decisions moving forward. That would be the only thing.
Well, and my not necessarily counter to that, but the part that I really started looking into, because I put it just like you did, and as I looked back, I said, but there were things that I missed out on that my friends got the opportunity to do.
Yeah.
And here was a problem. They say that when babies don't crawl and they end up and they just start walking, developmentally something happens.
Right.
And I don't know if it's whether it's cognition, I don't know all the science to it, but what they prove that when they just go from on the floor to walking, that there's something that's missed. And I think that's what happened. No, I'm sure that's what happens to us sometimes as black males. We're forced to make these serious decisions. You know what I mean? I married very young. Right. You know what I mean? Started a family, gave up athletics, got married. Fortunately, I made a beautiful, smart woman. But,
beautiful, smart women are the best ones to have on your side, though. For longevity.
And I don't want to trivialize beauty, but what's important is, we had a plan and a focus, and she was very smart, and went all the way through and got a PhD. But we had a plan,
right?
Because we knew what we didn't want for our own children. But for me, it was kind of the things that I missed. I was fortunate that my best friend's family allowed me in from the time, he and I was best friends since second grade, but when I was it was before we started driving, so say 14, 15, we started hanging out and spending time, and then his father, which is really where my whole theory and understanding of mentorship kicked in as it relates to what you were saying. My best friend's father started to pull me to the side and say, you need to focus on this. And where you guys going? Well, we about to go hang out for a little while. He said, don't you have a track meet tomorrow? Yeah, well, y'all need to go ahead and go to sleep, man. And then we performed, peak, but as a boy. But what I was slowly learning, when we left to college, my best friend went to the University of Toledo and I went to Michigan State. And I later transferred to Toledo. And as we got older, and and then when I decided to leave and give up eligibility, and got married, took a job,
Yeah.
blah blah blah. When my best friend and we started talking about getting married and our lives, my best friend would go home and talk to his father or his parents. He didn't make any real serious decisions. He talked to his father.
Yeah.
Well, eventually, his father offered me those same things, and so I'm 23 years old making these decisions, and no, I take that back. I was 22, and I remember, they said I could have 2 years of eligibility left if I came back, and blah, blah, blah. And so I started trying to work on that. And I'll never forget this because it affected the rest of my life and why I so appreciate the opportunity to be a mentor as someone was to me. I go home with him, and I go in, I tell him I need to talk to Dad. I called his father Dad. So I'm talking to him. I said, listen, I got the opportunity to go back to school, and I think if I can run these times, I can, make it to this place, and I can do this, and then that put me on schedule to graduate in so much time, and blah, blah, blah. And he listened to me, and he said, that all sounds good. He said, but once you got married and you have a child, it's no longer about you. It's about you taking care of your wife and making sure she reaches her dream, and you being a father to your daughter. He said, it's no longer about you. He said, that all sounds good, don't get me wrong. But the reality is, you're a father and a husband first, and then whatever you want to do has to come later. And so I live by that motto, and I share that story with as many young brothers as I can, is because our community has deteriorated as when we start talking about single motherhood and blah, blah, blah. Because if you have no one standing in the way of the images that these young black males are seeing, what would you expect? Why do you think so many young black males believe they can go to the NFL and the NBA?
How do you deal with criticism that comes your way with what you're trying to do? Because you're, let's say, a minority again in that subject matter, because people don't know any different, and you become an opposition to that. How do you deal with that? I come from, I guess you say, blue collar, middle class people. My real father passed away very young, and my mother later remarried. And so my stepfather worked for Ford, did very well, and my mother went back to college and blah, blah, blah. But as they ascended into the middle class based on income, my mother was always one of these people. You couldn't have paid her to join the Links or some social organization where we marginalize other black people, and we start to look as if we are these people and they are those people. And so I've always shied away from that. And so to your question, for me, it's about getting up close and personal with people. I don't care if I'm dressed like I'm dressed right now. If I see a young guy, his pants are down, or his hat is a certain way, or it's something that I know that he's not able to handle the consequences of the way he looks. So, you have the right to look the way you want to look, but be ready to handle the consequences of the way you look. Yeah, to deal with the decisions.
And so my relationship with all of these students that I come in contact with is very up close and personal. They know they can call me anytime. They know when there's a crisis, hey, call me. I'll see who I can call to help you. They know that I know Dr. Williams and Dr. Thomas and these people with expectations. You understand? So if I send you, I'm very clear now, if I send you there and they help you, this is how I want you to take care of yourself in that conversation and do this, 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 and this. You understand? And so now they have an expectation on them that's never been placed on them, but they understand why. See, I didn't walk up and say, pull your pants up, you look so and so and so. I say, hey man, look, you know what I mean? Like, you walking around with your pants down, man, what kind of self-respect is that? And so I engage them instead of putting them down. Right. And so it's no rebellion to me, because they see me as, as you asking them, they refer to me as Brother Byron. That's what I tell them. I don't do the Mr. thing. That's not important to me. That means nothing to me. But you refer to, and the reason I say Brother Byron, all of you already have fathers. I'm not trying to be your father, but if you see me as your brother, that's somebody you can trust, somebody you can come to, somebody you can bring somebody to that you know is going to help shield you, protect you, or help even tell you some hard truths if it'll move you forward. Yeah.
So my final question is, I always ask this question to leaders because it kind of corners them into deciding what their best tools are. And if you were to get amnesia today, what would you want to be the first thing to be brought to you so that you could kind of rekindle what you have inside of you? as a leader and a mentor?
The lives that I've changed. that means more to me than I won't say anything, because my wife and children and family is the most important, God. But it's important, and it's a really good feeling to know that we live in a society that can just execute young black men, and people just act as if, well, you know, maybe he did this, and maybe, you know, I guess it's just some justification. We have 20 cases of young black males just being executed. I mean, literally, because that's what that is. That's an act of execution. If my hands are up and you pull a gun out and I'm, you understand? And so when I have these talks with them, or we communicate, many email me. I have 5 now that are in national programs for mentorship, you know, Read for America, those types of programs. 5 who took to heart the experience that I talked about, because something that I emphasized. See, it's your duty to come here to get a degree. I'm not going to pat you on the back for that. No, I'm happy that you did it. But see, that's how you move yourself from the struggles that you come from. But you open another door attaining that degree. It doesn't guarantee you, because you may be in a field that doesn't pay a lot of money. But it's a long way, a far cry from the poverty you were dealing with. And so I stress, it is important for you to get the degree, perform as best you can, understand about it. But if you get a degree and you can't help your own people with it, you've wasted your time. You've pretty much, because you've asked to be a spoke in somebody else's will. And so the part that I close with them is this: you owe your community. You owe the ancestors. You owe people who kick doors in. You understand? You owe, you know, it's reading the rethinking of W.E. Du Bois's Talented Tenth. He, a few years, 17 years later, I believe, he rewrote that theory. He said, because the very people that we talked about becoming this critical group of people to be these thinkers are so busy trying to stay middle class and live it. They've closed the door on the very people who prayed them in and needed their help. So I tell them, if you got a job for IBM in California, you go find an elementary school in that area with some people that came from the same circumstances you did, and you go give them a few hours a week. Then you know how good of a person you are. Then you know who you are. So don't get caught up in the fact that now I can afford to buy this kind of car. Now people don't look at me as a black person who's this because I have these things. Well, my quick answer to that is, I grew up with a whole bunch of drug dealers. I mean, they all got all the things.
Everything.
You see what I mean? So what does that mean?
A coffee every day of the week.
You see what I'm saying? So the idea is, there is a place you have to find within you that you can contribute back to the people you come from. Because it's all, and that's why I use the circle, because it's ever going. You know what I mean? There is no breaking point. You see what I mean? And so that's what we have to be, and then you start to take that this way.
Moving upwards.
That's right.
For sure.
That's right. But it should be holding somebody else's hand.
Right. Brother Byron, we appreciate it, man.
Yes,
thank you for being here today, and good luck in your journey through mentorship and sport management. And we hope your family's doing well.
Yes.
All right, take care.
Thank you.
I'd also like to thank the University Television staff for their help putting this program together. And until next time, I'm Quentin Parker, encouraging you to get out into your community and reach for the Leadership Summit. Have a great day.